Welcome to the realm of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Enjoy listening. Jeff Armstrong had carried the burden of his garden on his shoulders for years. As he grew older, the idea of tending to it no longer appealed to him. He had reached the point of giving it up entirely. On top of that, theft had become a recurring issue in his garden. This infuriated him, and his frustration took a toll on his already fragile heart. Battling numerous illnesses, Jeff had no family left. He was utterly alone. More and more his thoughts drifted towards death. He had even hung a sign in his yard that read, "I no longer grow crops." Those who once relied on his produce ceased to communicate with him after seeing the sign. Now he sat on his porch in his rocking chair, eyes fixed on the once fertile soil of his garden. The sky was painted in shades of orange when the old wooden gate creaked. Since no one ever visited, he ignored it. But then the knock came again. Slowly, he rose from his chair, his aging bones protesting with every step, and opened the door. Standing before him was a woman, but not an ordinary woman. She had long, white, furry rabbit ears, lavender-colored hair, and porcelain-smooth skin. Jeff blinked in disbelief. "Am I dying?" he muttered. The woman tilted her head slightly and smiled. "Why did you stop growing crops?" Jeff's expression hardened. He sighed and shut the door in her face. The knock came again, this time more forceful. "Mr. Armstrong," the woman called. "Why did you stop growing crops?" Jeff furrowed his brows and yanked the door open again. "Because it's pointless," he snapped. "Because it doesn't help anyone. Because people are selfish. Because—" He suddenly stopped. The woman was watching him intently, studying his every move. "Who even are you? And why do you look like this?" The woman gently nodded. "I'll explain everything. But if you have any carrots, can we talk inside?" Jeff narrowed his eyes at her, but eventually stepped aside, allowing her in. They moved to the kitchen, where he rummaged through an old cupboard and pulled out a few remaining carrots. He placed them before her. The woman eagerly picked one up and took a loud, satisfying bite. The crunch echoed in the quiet kitchen. Then she locked eyes with Jeff. "I once lived in space," she said between chews, "but I was exiled. As punishment, I was turned into this rabbit-like form and sent to Earth." Jeff raised an eyebrow. "What did you do to get exiled?" The woman rolled her eyes. "I stole a few carrots from the sacred carrot fields of the Galactic Council." Jeff let out a bark of laughter. "You must be joking." She shrugged. "That was my only crime." Jeff shook his head in disbelief. Unbelievable, truly unbelievable. The woman took another bite, then turned her gaze toward Jeff's garden. "But, you know," she said slowly, "you can still grow something." Jeff hesitated for a moment. Something stirred inside him, a feeling he hadn't felt in a long time. The woman narrowed her eyes and smirked. "Maybe we could do it together." Jeff, trying to suppress the strange emotion building within him, motioned for her to step outside. She obeyed, still nibbling on her carrot. He walked to the grass and lay down, stretching out as he gazed at the sky. The woman followed suit, her rabbit ears twitching slightly. The sky was still painted with streaks of warm orange and pink. They lay there in silence for a while. Then Jeff asked how she had ended up here. The woman explained in more detail how rigid and unforgiving her society had been. Even minor mistakes led to severe punishments. Stealing the carrots had only been an excuse to exile her. The real reason was that she thought differently, refusing to conform to their strict ways. Jeff listened carefully. He had once tried to help people, only to be met with ingratitude. Maybe her exile and his solitude weren't so different after all. The woman then turned to him. "Why did you really stop growing crops?" Jeff sighed. "Because I'm tired. Because giving to people has brought me nothing but exhaustion. I don't care anymore." The woman tilted her head, studying him again. "People might be ungrateful," she admitted, "but the soil isn't. If you plant something, it will always give back." They lay in the grass for a while longer, letting the fresh scent of the earth fill their lungs. Then Jeff turned to her and made an offer. "I'll grow carrots," he said, "but only if you stay here. I don't have the energy to do it alone." The woman thought for a moment, then smiled softly. All right, I'll stay here for a while. And so they began. The first step was preparing the soil. Jeff taught her how to revive the neglected garden, and she helped him with every task. As they worked together, Jeff felt something inside him mend, something he had long assumed was broken. Bringing the garden back to life gave him a renewed sense of purpose. Jeff estimated that they had about 15 weeks before the carrots would be ready. The woman agreed to stay for that time. As the days passed, their bond grew stronger. Jeff, who had spent so many years drowning in loneliness, now had someone by his side. The woman, too, adapted to her new life on Earth. Time passed quickly, and soon the 15th week arrived. The carrots were finally ready for harvest. Jeff stood before the thriving garden, taking a deep breath. It had been so long since he had seen such a sight. He felt pride, but also an underlying sadness. He wasn't sure what would happen after this. The woman suddenly shouted, "I want to see the carrots." She ran toward the crops, and together they began harvesting. The yield was incredible. They had more carrots than they could have hoped for. Jeff assumed she would leave soon, so he placed a generous handful of carrots into a bag and held it out to her. But instead of taking it, she turned to him with a determined look in her eyes. "If you'll have me," she said softly, "I want to stay forever." Jeff's fingers tightened around the bag of freshly harvested carrots. He hadn't expected this, hadn't dared to hope for it. For 15 weeks, they had worked side by side, tending the soil, watching the tiny green shoots push through the earth, and sharing meals under the setting sun. He had grown used to her presence, to the way her long ears twitched when she was deep in thought, to the way she hummed softly while watering the plants. Forever. The word echoed in his mind like an unfamiliar melody. He had spent so long alone, believing that loneliness was simply a part of growing old. But now, the thought of returning to that emptiness was unbearable. A slow smile spread across his weathered face. "Then I guess you're stuck with me," he said, his voice gruff but warm. The woman's lavender-colored hair caught the fading sunlight as she grinned. "Good, because I'm not going anywhere." The days stretched into weeks, and life on the farm took on a steady rhythm. Jeff found himself waking up with a newfound purpose, knowing that someone was waiting for him at the breakfast table. The once-abandoned garden flourished under their combined effort. The carrots had been just the beginning. Soon, they were planting tomatoes, lettuce, even a few fruit trees. He taught her the ways of the earth, showing her how to test the soil, how to recognize when a plant needed more water or sunlight. In return, she taught him how to listen to the wind, to the stars, and to the quiet moments in between. She spoke of the vastness of the universe, of planets with glowing rivers and floating mountains, of creatures that sang in colors instead of sounds. At night, they sat on the porch, rocking gently in their chairs, gazing up at the endless sky. "Do you ever miss it?" Jeff asked one evening. She tilted her head, considering. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but I don't regret staying. I belong here now." Jeff nodded, feeling a strange sense of peace settle over him. He had spent so many years waiting for an ending. Now, for the first time in a long while, he was simply living. Seasons changed, and their small farm became something of a legend in the town. People who had once turned away from Jeff's door began to return, curious about the new life that had sprung from his land. The woman, who never shared her real name but let people call her Luna, charmed the visitors with her unusual appearance and gentle warmth. One autumn morning, Jeff stood at the edge of the field, watching Luna chase a butterfly through the rows of pumpkins. The sight filled him with a quiet joy. "Hey, Luna," he called. She turned, her eyes bright. "Yes. Think we should build another room onto the house?" He scratched the back of his head, feeling slightly embarrassed by the suggestion. "You know, in case we ever get more company." Luna's ears perked up as she considered his words. A playful grin spread across her face. "Oh, are you expecting guests, Jeff?" He huffed, shoving his hands into his pockets. "Just thinking. Maybe one day, someone else might need a place to stay. Like you did." Luna tilted her head, her lavender hair catching the autumn sunlight. "You're a good man, Jeff Armstrong," she said warmly. "All right, let's build another room." Jeff wasn't sure what he expected, but the next morning, Luna had already started gathering supplies. She wasn't much for traditional tools, but she had her own way of doing things. With surprising strength, she carried heavy wooden beams like they weighed nothing, and with an almost supernatural precision, she measured and cut the planks without hesitation. "You've done this before," Jeff muttered as he watched her work. Luna smirked. "Let's just say I had to rebuild my own spaceship once. A house is much easier." He shook his head, amused, and together they started the slow process of expanding their home. Days turned into weeks, and before long, the extra room was finished. It wasn't anything fancy, just a cozy little space with a window overlooking the garden. "Looks good," Jeff admitted, standing in the doorway. Luna dusted off her hands. "It does, doesn't it?" She looked around proudly, then turned to Jeff. "Who do you think will stay here first?" He shrugged. "No idea, but someone will come along." As it turned out, he was right. One evening, as winter approached, Jeff heard a strange noise from outside. At first, he thought it was the wind, but then came a distinct knock at the old wooden gate. He exchanged a glance with Luna before making his way to the entrance. When he pulled it open, he found a young boy, no older than 12, shivering in the cold. The boy looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. "Please, I don't have anywhere to go." Jeff's heart clenched. He had been alone for so long, but now he had the space, the means, and, most importantly, the will to help. He stepped aside. "Well, come on in, then." Luna smiled as the boy entered, wrapping a warm blanket around his shoulders. "You're safe here," she told him gently. The boy, hesitant at first, eventually warmed up to them. His name was Eli, and he had run away from a bad home, seeking shelter anywhere he could find it. Jeff and Luna didn't pry too much. They simply gave him a place to rest, food to eat, and company to share. Slowly, their small home became something more than just a refuge for two lost souls. It became a sanctuary. Years passed. The farm flourished, the house grew, and their little family expanded in unexpected ways. Eli stayed, becoming like a grandson to Jeff and a little brother to Luna. More travelers came and went, some staying for days, others for months. Some helped in the fields, others simply found peace in the quiet countryside. Jeff, once resigned to a lonely ending, found himself surrounded by laughter, conversation, and warmth. One evening, as he and Luna sat on the porch, watching the sunset, he sighed contentedly. "You know, I never thought I'd have this," he admitted. Luna reached over and squeezed his hand. "Neither did I." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the distant laughter of Eli playing with the new visitors. "Forever, huh?" Jeff murmured, glancing at her. Luna turned to him, smiling. "Forever," she confirmed. And for the first time in a long, long while, Jeff believed it.